again, anti-question one here, so we'll go to question 2, thinking that we only have just the people who were saying no on question 2 here. Next we'll hear from Brian Houghton, like Houghton's Pond. I actually worked there, close to there. Brian Houghton from
Massachusetts Food Association.
Massachusetts Food Association. Brian, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I'm Brian Houghton. I'm the Vice President of the Massachusetts Food Association. We're a trade association that represents the supermarket and grocery industry in Massachusetts. We've got, for our membership, we've got the small corner stores up to the big Stop and Shops of the world and everybody in between. Roach Brothers and the independents, Market Basket, Shaw's, and then we also have the non-retail segment of the food industry, the Coca-Colas, the Crafts, the brokers, the wholesalers, manufacturers, distributors, basically anybody that has the food industry. We represent them on legislation, on regulatory issues. We have a hired lobbyist that goes up on Beacon Hill. I've been forced to register as a lobbyist now, even though I do the same thing I was doing before I was not a lobbyist, but I've got to fill out paperwork now and do what I've been doing up there. But we're here in support of opposition to no on question 2. What the supporters are trying to do is expand the forced deposit law. Right now you pay a nickel for every carbonated beverage that you purchase at the store, every malt beverage or beer that you purchase at the store. They want to expand this nickel deposit, this forced deposit, upon everything else that's in the store now. The stores, except for dairy.
Wine? Wine bottles?
Water bottles would be included. The only thing that wouldn't be included are the dairy products, the infant formula products, and anything that has to be done with a prescription or whatever it may be, medical. Just out of curiosity, how about those little juice bag things? Aseptic packaging is excluded. Okay. And the foil pieces, yeah, those are excluded. But what it includes is everything else. It's the large cranberry juices that you get that are the big square-shaped ones. Orange juice or lemonade containers that you have. And our industry, again, the food stores, is being forced to deal with all this trash that people are dragging back to the food stores to deal with. The bottle bill was put through in 1984. It was probably a good idea back in the time because there was not as much curbside recycling or drop-off centers as there are now. According to the Department of Environmental Protection, over 90% of citizens in the state have access to a drop-off or curbside. So we've always said that, you know, if you're looking at a deposit system where you've already got the blue bin that you're putting at the end of the driveway, why are you taking this one can out to bring back, or bottle out, to bring back to the store, to get a nickel, have to put it in a machine that the store has to take care of, get rid of that trash, send it back through the system, when you can just simply put it at the curb, keep your nickel to begin with, and have it recycled in the same manner as all your other trash is being done all the time. And we also like to ask the question, if there was as much curbside and recycling and drop-off as there is today, would you actually go out and invent the bottle bill? Would you force one part of all your trash that you're putting out to take one component out of that bucket and say, I'm going to charge everybody a nickel for each one of those containers? Then you're going to have to get it in your car, drive it back with all the other stuff to bring back to the food store. It just doesn't make sense today. It's just an outdated system. It's one of the reasons why we're opposing any expansion for it. Again, food store is not the place to deal with trash. They deal with enough things with their organics that the state has just banned. We've been far ahead of the curve on those type of programs to get the organics out of the waste stream. They've had to deal with the forced deposit law through these machines. But if it's expanded, now these machines are going to have to take everything from a little Red Bull can back to, again, the big containers of cranberry juice, the cold drinks that you have, which are sometimes in the produce section too, the palm bottles, which are shaped like two spheres. And some of the stuff you just can't put in the machine, so it's going to force the food stores to probably man these places if the machines can't take the product back. And again, they're trying to keep them clean, they're trying to keep the rooms clean. A lot of our smaller members have said they wouldn't simply have the room to put these machines in. They couldn't handle an expansion if you're a small grocer in the inner city here or whatever it may be. And it's just not the way to go. Why are we taking away from a waste collection system that
we already have in place at curbside and drop-off and segregating more components out of it. It just doesn't make sense, whether it's a bottle or it's a glass jar or whatever it may be that's going to be covered under the bottle bill. I mean, in a perfect world, this would be a question of repeal of the forced deposit law. But further expansion just makes no sense to our membership and to the people who produce the bottles and the people who are in the stores that have to deal with this trash. It's just not the direction that we feel the Commonwealth should be going. Not taking away from the recycling systems that are out there now, the companies that depend on that trash too, that recycle, that the sellers of the world, it's basically taking away a lot of their revenue. They don't get the aluminum, which is one of the most valuable commodities in the waste stream, from all the cans that are going to be put in the bin. If that's taken away from them, then it's not going to support their new plants that they've built. They just built a new plant, Casella, over here in Charlestown, to handle more waste and more trash, into more of a resource and deal with it as a commodity, not trash, but as a commodity, which can be recycled and reused. Well, now, if you're going to take more of this stuff out of that waste stream, they're not getting the funding from selling the aluminum or the plastic to be recycled and support them as a business. So it's almost like a dual approach to our trash. We're building up the infrastructure to handle more in the private sector, but if we're going to start dipping into that resource that they have, it's going to hurt their business too, and it's forcing more expenses upon a food store. Our estimates are that if you expand the bottle deposit law right now, the forced deposit law is going to increase costs in the supermarket about $60 million a year. And that cost is built into the system of collecting the bottles, of dealing with it, having to keep the bookkeeping on the nickel for every container that's coming back to the store. It's a $60 million hit, and it's got to be absorbed somewhere. DEP will refute those findings because they said they went to Connecticut and they did a study on the price of containers down there that were not under the deposit and the containers being sold in Massachusetts over the border, and they found no price discrepancies really. Well, if you went through the entire store and checked the pricing on every one of those goods, there may be a penny here or 2 cents there, whatever it may be. The cost is spread out throughout the store. It's not just contained to the containers themselves. Realtors, a food store is not going to say, well, I'm going to have to jack up my every can of soda 5 cents because it's going to cost me 5 cents more. That's going to be absorbed in every department. It's going to be a little bit to bakery, a little bit to seafood, a little bit to delicatessen. So it comes from somewhere, and the store can't absorb it. So it's an additional cost that's going to be put upon our industry and upon the consumers ultimately. It's taking away from our present waste stream and system and hurting those businesses that handle it. And it's just not the way to go, we feel, in this day and age. We're taking a step backwards. It's like using a rotary phone to make your phone calls now. It worked back then in the 80s, but it's not going to work now. I'm sorry?
How many states have a forced deposit law?
There are, I think it's 9 states right now. That have, is it 10?
Mm-hmm.
10.
Delaware just repealed it, and their recycling rate went up.
Who just repealed it?
Delaware
Delaware just did away with bottle.
went up, yes.
They did away with the forced deposit law and their recycling rates, as you can imagine, they're going up because of the curbside collection and the drop-off centers. Yes?
Isn't the push for expanded enforced recycling the fact that people don't recycle, and so this will be an extra $30, $40, $50 million that goes to state government? I mean, right now, non-recycled, the state collects, I think, $35 million
They do. They get about $35 million a year if you do not return your container for your nickel.
Right, and I live in Boston. I have single stream. I recycle 99%. And so all it is I'm not returning it for 5 cents, and so the state gets the money.
That nickel used to go to a fund that was specifically to help out the Department of Environmental Protection, to help out cities and towns in recycling. I think a third of it was also to deal with hazardous waste. Well, the state was facing some tough economic times, and of course they found this untapped fund of money that was coming in every year, so that's now going into the general fund. And the proponents of the question will say, well, it's in the bill. It's going to go into a specific fund to help the environment again. Well, we did back then, and they took it when they needed it. That's not uncommon, but the governor every year puts into his budget an expansion of the bottle bill, because he knows, and he's even said it in the budget, that this year was 25 million, and I think last year was 23 million, but that's how much he expects to make off of the system if it fails. If you don't bring your nickel back because you get so many containers now and you just put them all at your curbside, that's what he's counting on, that you don't turn it in, and they'll get the money and keep it, and it goes into the general fund. There was a bill introduced by Senator Sonia Chang Diaz for last session too. That said,
My senator?
she said she was looking at tax issues. She named it tax issues. There were a number of things to raise boat excise, and one of them was expansion of the bottle bill. It was in the tax bill. So when they say it's not a tax, well, it's revenue for the state. Nobody claims it, and it's used in the general fund to help fund the state. I don't know what else you call it. Yes?
You were talking about how it's removed from the stream, then that would go to the plants that are doing whatever they're doing in the recycling industry. What is, when they collect it, what do they do with it? Do they recycle it? If you get the refund or whatever it is, you redeem it or whatever, you take it to the store, what do they do? What do they do with the bottles from there? Do they send them to the plant also, or no?
No, I don't believe they go through the municipal waste.
I think the redemption centers have their own deal with recycling
Yeah,
bottles. So like he's
It's
mentioning
crunched up in the machine when you drop it.
yeah, he was talking about the Costellos and the E.L. Harveys and those guys who pick up your recycling now. They're not gonna benefit. Like the redemption centers don't give them the quantities.
I was just trying to distinguish it. One place they're crushing them, maybe reusing material. I didn't know if you take them to the bottle place, and the idea is that they actually reuse them, they rinse them and reuse them instead of crush them or else they have them.
Yeah, the machines crush them up when you put them in the machine. You'll hear it break up or the plastic is shredded or whatever it may be. But that's taken out of the waste stream that the cities and towns are collecting. Therefore, the commodity's gone from the cities and towns stream, so the city and town isn't getting the aluminum that they would get from the seller if it's taken out of the waste stream.
It's a valuable part of the
Curbside
recycling.
Another question too. I don't know what the current law is. I mean, are local 7-Elevens required to have redemption or receptacles or whatever presently as well?
If you sell it, you're responsible for it. So if you're selling right now Coke and Pepsi, you've got to have a system to take it back.
So if you're just a small mom and pop or something, you need some. I'm looking for what you're saying. You can expand. If you're selling larger bottles, then they're going to need larger equipment to
There is an exemption if you're a certain amount of employees in store space in more than one location. If you're small enough, you don't have to take back.
I think it's 5,000 square feet of selling space.
Yes.
Which is a small store.
Yeah.
Very small
and so
store.
usually I've talked to a lot of business owners, what those business owners do is they don't charge the 5 cents to the consumer, they just pay it themselves. So they're kind of like eating the cost because they can't physically take back these bottles. So that cost for them is just, it's going to become unaffordable because they can't have that 5 cents on every single one of the beverages. It's like your local convenience store where they don't even sell the beer anyway. So it's just all those other beverage containers that this law is talking about. So it really, really negatively affect them.
Thank you very much.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah.
So right here, we have a ton of collateral materials. Oh, another question?
Yeah,
Oh,
more?
sorry.
So your contention is, though, that these costs will be spread broadly throughout the entire spectrum of foodstuffs for sale in a grocery store to the public, right? It'll increase their cost to buy food, that'll increase the cost that it is expended for EBT and food stamps and all of that also commensurately?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
That's true too.
Okay.
Yeah. And you figure if it's a nickel deposit, you go and buy a case of water.
Yeah.
It's a 24/6, yeah, that's 24 containers right there. That is a nickel. That's 24.
But I mean, in the bakery department and the fish department and whatever you buy.
It'll increase the cost of running a business.
Not only
basically.
confined to beverages.
And those little water bottles that you typically like smush into nothing, you'll have to actually return them whole because they'll need to be able to count them and maybe even barcode them if they're being put into the machine.
If they're damaged, if they're dented, whatever the case may be, it's not acceptable.
Right. So if they were thinking they're going to get rid of that,
Gas, all your essentials, right? Sure.
good shape.
And that leaves your job too, you know, and people will be cut.
Yeah,
Every 5 years, without a vote, that price is just gonna go up and
Yeah,
up.
the deposit
Yeah,
and
sure.
the handling fee, which is the fee that the bottlers get, the distributors get after they have to go pay for the material.
And there would be no vote. No vote.
It goes up automatically according to the consumer.
infinity and beyond based on the CPI.
There's no cap, yeah.
But there's also, that applies to just the ones that they're adding, or does that actually go to the, say, the soda cans that they are recycling now?
It will go to everything.
So this is actually doing it on everything.
Yeah, yeah, there's no distinction between what's on it now and what would be added. It would all be grouped
So
together.
5 years from now, your nickel that you're putting on a can of soda could be, well, 6 cents. Hopefully it's only,
Would be 15.
Yeah, less,
starting to
said
hear
that.
dollars around, wheelbarrow around.
Never heard anything go backwards in cost, right? It goes
You
forward.
know something scary is the state of Maine expanded their beverage container deposit law. Once it expanded, they went even further. Bottles of wine have a 15-cent deposit in Maine. So, yeah, I mean, it just, if it expands, they're just gonna keep going.
It's to hold you hostage, just to make sure you bring that container back to that store you bought.